I think one of the things that often comes up for all spouses is the holidays stir up a lot of grief.
You come back, maybe even in the house that you grew up in, and you're going to be flooded with memories. And this is even before you say hello to mom or dad or to siblings.
It's supposed to be a warm, joyful time, and often spouses feel like this should be how it feels.
The dynamic is different with this new information of things that have come out.
All of a sudden, the whole feel of the holiday has changed.
What's going to come out? What are they going to ask me?
You're feeling just being pulled in so many different directions when you're already under strain.
Probably you're not going to get it right the first time. We're going to acknowledge what worked and what didn't work. This is the beginning of doing things differently.
Welcome to UNAshamed, the First Light podcast. As you know, we are entering the holidays. We think families gathering, meals, exchanging gifts, holiday tradition, and cheer. But for many people struggling with sexual sin or healing from betrayal, the holidays can feel very different. Family gatherings in particular can stir up painful memories, unspoken tensions, or pressure to pretend everything is okay. And for couples who travel, they find themselves dealing with these issues out of their regular routine and away from their support system. Today, David and Karen will help us navigate the difficulties of this time with family and in-laws through the holiday season. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
David, for men who are struggling with sexual sin, what challenges do they face when going back to their family of origin during the holiday season?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jonathan. As I think back on times where I've visited family of origin and I've spoken with guys who've gone back and visited their families, down to how much the family knows and how much is appropriate to keep from the family and how much really remains hidden. And that's going to be different for every man. And so what that means is they're going to be managing appearances. You come back, maybe even in the house that you grew up in, and you're going to be flooded with memories of things that have happened in that space in the past, whether it was meeting acting out partners in that space, or it was accessing porn, or having various sinful sexual experiences. That is going to all come back, especially that first trip after coming into recovery, where really started to begin to reframe the things that have happened in the past and being back in that physical environment. And this is even before you say hello to mom or dad or to siblings. That's another thing that can come up is just the old patterns of how we relate to each other. Most people, when they go home, they kind of revert back to an age when they were last there, and they start relating in old ways to the people in their home. So maybe they're being treated like a child again, or maybe they're just acting like a child again. And it may be, rebellious teenage stage that comes up for them or something else. But those interactions, you're never starting with a clean slate. You're always coming back in with all of that old baggage. I would also say a lot of guys have really good routines, and routines are really important for them to have in place around their self-care, around the phone calls they're making, around the meetings that they're getting to in order to be more known, in order to continue to break that isolation. And they've got that figured out. Here they are at the holidays and they're on vacation. And so they have expectations around what vacation is supposed to look like, but they've already lost the structure of getting up at a certain time and going through a particular routine. And then somebody might have a routine in their week. They may generally not drink alcohol at all, or they generally might not smoke cigarettes or imbibe in other substances. But when they're back in that family of origin environment, they may revert, or there may just be an expectation around drinking around the holiday. The holiday may have particular customs around drinking that they're going to partake in. And so it's just considering ahead of time, how am I going into this place? What supports am I going to put in place? What decisions am I going to make ahead of time before I even get there and I'm confronted with needing to make the decision? And sharing those, bringing those into community with guys in check-in meetings or with your point man, once you have your point man, and having someone to hold you accountable to those so that you can say, hey, this is how I did today. I kept myself to one drink. This is when my next meeting is. This is when my next phone call is. Just being able to create a new structure in anticipation of that visit is really important.
Karen, what sort of challenges do spouses who've experienced betrayal face when she is with her family of origin through the holidays?
Each spouse is going to be different. I think one of the things that often comes up for all spouses is the holidays stir up a lot of grief. And it's supposed to be a warm, joyful time. And often spouses feel like this should be how it feels, but can't muster that up. In particular, if we're thinking just about when we're with the family of origin, there are a number of different things that can come up. And so what I might name now won't apply across the board for everyone, but can give an idea of what the landscape might feel like. I really appreciate how David talked about how whether the family knows plays a huge role. Because if the family does not know, then that means the spouse is having to compartmentalize her grief in order to maintain appearances. And it may be like maintaining appearances for elderly parents or for young children, maintaining appearances with some family and not with others. That compartmentalization does require extra emotional work for the wife. And then like you're wrestling with your own feelings about your spouse. At the same time, if they know, you are processing other people's feelings. So let's say if the family does know, you're processing their feelings about your spouse and maybe their opinions about what you should do, whether you should stay or leave. I know sometimes the family is openly antagonistic towards the spouse who has acted out and will not welcome that spouse into the home. And then the question becomes, okay, does that mean we go without him? Or does that mean none of us go? And now all of a sudden, the wife is not just wrestling with the question of, do I celebrate with my husband, but do I choose between him and my family of origin? How will this impact young children who have grown to love opening presents with cousins and all of that? All of a sudden, the whole feel of the holiday has changed. On the other hand, there are some families, maybe they know, and they just decide it's best to pretend like everything's the same. And so everybody's putting on all these adults are putting on a front or ignoring or not acknowledging the pain that the wife is in. So there's no asking like, how are you guys doing? What's going on? And that can lead a wife to feeling extremely isolated. And on the other hand, sometimes families love us and they just don't know how to engage it, because maybe if I bring it up, she'll start crying. I don't want her to have to cry. I want her to be able to enjoy the holidays. And so there's like kind of I'm not sure how to engage this with you. And it can feel awkward, and just navigating that even is really difficult. And then there's always, while many of us may appreciate different aspects of our family and our family traditions, there's always some pain that comes with it. Oftentimes, maybe the way that my father tends to tell me like what I should or should not be doing, or the expectations that my parents have had for me, whether or not I'm able to live up to it professionally. Maybe I don't have the bandwidth to perform as well at work, or their expectations of my parenting abilities. And I don't have the ability to parent the way I even want to right now in this season. Or maybe like my parents never liked my husband and now they have evidence of being right and I have to deal with those feelings. So just so many different complications. It's a rough season. And often for women who have children, there is that longing to give children happy holidays, good memories, and feeling unable to do what she would like to do.
I'm just listening to Karen. I'm thinking the topic that we have is when people travel to be with family at the holidays. And so that's our audience right now. Mm-hmm. And that's the right audience for this podcast. And I just want people to know that it is a choice, whether you're going to go see family or not, whether it's his family or her family or not. I think one of the expectations around holidays that couples often don't examine is we always go to her house for Thanksgiving and to his family's house for Christmas or something like that. And I just want to invite people to remember the dynamic is different with this new information of things that have come out. And I think it's important to have those conversations and not make the assumption ahead of time. And probably for most couples, it's going to need to be in the context of a marriage counseling session, but at least have the conversation of what are we doing this year? And just like Karen's saying, bringing in all these dynamics of like, these are the things that I'm legitimately concerned about. These are the things he or she is legitimately concerned about. And how are we're not going to navigate it perfectly. Things are already not perfect.
Right.
Things are never perfect, but we do want to work together as a team. Maybe the couple isn't even there yet.
I was thinking like you have ideally two spouses who recognize, okay, this was a big deal in our marriage. We have so much work to do. We're both going to work on it. But not every spouse is in that space.
That's
so
right.
Sometimes it's the one with the compulsive sexual behaviors who really does want to work on it, and the wife is just not there. She's not even necessarily wanting to stay in the marriage. And it can be the other way around. And it can also be like one spouse really needs to be with their family and the other one really does not want to be. And all of a sudden you're feeling just being pulled in so many different directions when you're already under strain. In my culture, being Asian, choosing not to be with family is a huge deal. And so when you were saying like you don't have to be with family, brings up like the incredible pain that I've had to wrestle with of like making that difficult decision to say, I don't have the bandwidth for this. And it's so difficult. It brings up more grief work. And I'm even thinking like for some of us just starting therapy and now you're like newly aware of family dynamics and realizing, oh, I did not realize how complicated this was for me. Yeah, there's just so many different layers.
For many of our married participants, they are in a situation where they aren't going to be spending time with their family of origin, but their in-laws. And for men, that means spending time with the family of a spouse he has betrayed. And for women, that means spending time with a family whose dynamics could be a destabilizing event for compulsive sexual behaviors. David, starting with you, what kind of challenges can men face visiting his in-laws during the holidays?
In general, every couple is different. Every set of in-laws is different. But in general, men who have acted out sexually come from family environments that are overly black and white, overly rigid, and overly detached emotionally. And in general, spouses who have married men who act out in sexual ways and have experienced betrayal in those relationships come from families that are enmeshed and are overly emotionally involved in one another's lives. Now, it's a generalization, and that's based on the research. I recognize you might be listening to this and thinking, that's not me at all. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But in general, that's how it works out. So if that is you, know that as a man coming into relating to his in-laws, it's already going to feel completely different. That his experience, and for many men, I've found this to be true, it's actually easier for him to be with his in-laws than it is to be with his own parents. And of course, that often depends on how much his in-laws know. So the example I'm giving is the in-laws generally don't know anything, or they know maybe generally the couple's going through a difficult situation, but they don't really have specifics. So if the man's going into an environment where his in-laws don't really know what's happening, then the main thing for him is probably just going to be fear of what's going to come out. What are they going to ask me? How do I need to act so that no questions will be asked, or that I will give the impression that everything is the way it's always been? That's emotionally exhausting because things are not the way they've always been. And actually that's a good thing, but you have people that aren't on board with that yet. So it certainly doesn't mean go ahead and disclose everything. There's a process for disclosing the families. So please don't use this holiday as a chance to get all your family caught up on what's been going on with us.
Please don't make this the most memorable Christmas ever.
Yeah. So when we talk a lot about secrecy and honesty, there is a way to be honest that will cause less damage. And going in there with the intention of getting everything out in the open will probably go disastrously for everybody involved. And I say that particularly for the men because the men have had experiences of getting their secrecy off their chest and feeling the acceptance in group or in a check-in meeting of people affirming and saying, thank you for sharing that, and being on the same journey with him. That is a different audience than your wife's family. So please do not go into a situation like that hoping that you're going to have a similar experience of catharsis, of getting it all out there. Don't do that. I'm not sure how to state that more strongly.
And you don't want to add another unnecessary trigger. You don't want Christmas to be another time when your wife is bracing for something. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of wisdom to that.
Karen, what sort of challenges do women who've experienced betrayal face when she is with her in-laws?
Yeah, so this circles back to that original caveat of, do they know? Do they agree that that was wrong? Or maybe they don't think it was wrong. Maybe it was a generational pattern. So there's a lot of different assumptions. There are really great in-laws out there. So I do want to acknowledge that there are instances where the in-laws will support the wife. And what a beautiful gift that is for them to come alongside her. This is not the case for everyone, for sure. But I do want to acknowledge, yes, there are some really great in-laws out there. But often the reality is, at First Light, we talk about how compulsive sexual behaviors are often coping mechanisms. So that means whatever your reality is, there is significant stress or whatever is happening that is driving us to cope with these behaviors. And so this does often mean that the husband's family has unhealth in some way. This could just be simply he reverts to being a son whenever he's with his family, and that he prioritizes whatever his parents are saying and neglects like what the wife needs, what their children need. Or it can be as complicated as his mother's highly controlling, or his father has abusive dynamics. And so being with his parents, the couple, I've often heard a lot of women say, like, she and her husband have to be on the same page about where to set the boundary, not staying with the family, staying elsewhere, putting limits on how much time they're with them. I think those are all complexities that come, and not just for the wife. I think, David, you would agree. The husband definitely comes across that with his wife's family as well. And sometimes I've heard beautiful work that husbands have done to step in and advocate for his wife with her own family. If she grew up with parents who are more narcissistic or tend to minimize her experience, I think both spouses often have a tricky dance that they're managing. And I think, a lot of what wives sometimes feel is if the husband's family does not know, that sense of obligation to protect him or to manage appearances for the sake of the children, maybe an awareness that the parents cannot handle this information because of what they would then have to think about their own parenting and who they are and how they may have failed. So I also do hear women who will muscle their way through the weekend with their in-laws, smile even though it's killing her, just to get through, do the thing that needs to be done. And one of the difficult things is in that process, because she's having to do that, resentment grows inside, and it will build to a point where it does erupt at some point, whether it's with the in-laws, with her husband. It does put a strain on her.
What I love about what you're saying, Karen, is that in addition to having the discussion and the conversation about whether or not we should go, having the conversation about how long we're going to stay, where we're going to stay,
Yes.
Are we going to have a car? Are we going to borrow a car? And I would say in general, the more you can move towards interdependence upon one another as a couple and less dependence upon the family of origin, the more options you're going to have in the moment.
Yeah. So you can have time with the in-laws, but you can have it in a different kind of way that honors what you need.
Yes.
While you're with them.
Yeah. And it just takes thinking through and knowing probably you're not going to get it right the first time. Circumstances are going to change. We're going to change as people. It's an ongoing conversation. We're learning wisdom. We're figuring this out together, and we're going to acknowledge what worked and what didn't work, and why it worked and why it didn't work, so that we can grow and learn as a couple as we continue on this journey together. I think that's really important, that we're intentional in moving in instead of just doing what we've always done. It may end up that you decide to do what we've always done and spend the 2 weeks because of the costs it takes to travel however far you're traveling.
Or staying in a hotel for multiple nights, yeah.
It may, but at least then you decided this is why we're doing it the way we've always done it. We're going to learn from that experience. And that can be a point of departure too. Like, hey, this is what we noticed, Mom and Dad, this last time that we visited you. And just so you know, we're going to do it differently next time. We haven't decided exactly what. We love you. And we're growing as a couple. We've been married 5 years now. We've been married 10 years now. However long it's been, we're learning about each other and we're going to do it differently next time. Just so you know.
Yeah. And I think often in recovery, the feeling is like, often for wives, we feel like we have no options, that we're highly limited in what we're able to do. And a lot of the work that wives learn to do is, how can I expand my idea of options? And that often includes thinking outside the box.
That's a good insight, Karen. I think that's true for the men as well, that that he has an idea of the way it's supposed to go, and that's the only way it can go. And thinking outside of the box is really key to navigating all of this.
I love what David said earlier about inviting a couples counselor into this conversation, because a third person can help you explore options that normally would not even cross your mind. It's for sure helped me in multiple situations. And a lot of what we want to do in healing is help you expand your options, help you to think about what it is that you need so that you can stay in relationship with important people, even if that relationship feels tricky.
For both partners, they may long for that picture-perfect holiday, even viewing it as a sanctuary where they will be able to escape the disappointments or the emotions that they've experienced. They might be listening to this thinking, oh, great, that's not going to be an escape. I'm going to take these emotions into the holidays. What words of encouragement can you offer strugglers and their spouses this coming holiday season?
Yeah, I would offer that if this is your first set of holidays that you're going into as a couple or even as a single man, that this is the beginning of doing things differently, that the Lord has called you out of this old pattern of sinful, compulsive behavior, and that you want to change. You want to do things differently because the Lord is at work in you and his Spirit is alive and active in you. And he's going to meet you wherever you go on this journey. As we come up on the Christmas season here, if I could be specific, the opportunities that you have to enter into worship with fellow believers, I really want you to look at those times as seeing that your life in Christ is more than just your family of origin. It's more than just your marriage. It's certainly not less than those things, but the Lord has brought you into a community of believers, and you may be visiting this church in a place where you're not familiar with these believers, and you may have critique about some of the ways they do things. You may want to tend towards being negative about the experience, but know that regardless of the tradition, the Lord is there. And if you have an open heart and open eyes to see how he's at work, he is going to meet you there in those worship services, in those times where you draw away to be in solitude with him, and that you can pray and you can ask, that there will be times where you can be in relationship with the people in your family and with your wife if you're married, or with her parents and her family of origin, that you can pray for the Lord to give you eyes of faith to see how he is at work in those particular relationships and in those particular situations, and how he's going ahead of you in those. And that's where we find our hope. We can't find our hope or expect to find our hope in things going the way we want them to go, or a particular outcome with how the kids respond to presents, or how whatever the thing is. Check your expectations and say, is that something that I can legitimately put my hope in? And chances are, if it's outside of who the Lord is and what he's doing in your life, that thing has a tremendous opportunity to fall short and to leave you disappointed.
That's good. I think for wives, I think of how often as women we long to create something beautiful, beautiful memories, opportunities to experience joy and wonder. And I think that's a beautiful gift to give to others. I think what the Christmas and Thanksgiving season invites women into is to experience that for yourself on a very personal level. And what I mean by that is sometimes we fill our life with so many things that we feel like we have to do to make things beautiful. But it may be that cutting back on some of those things and slowing down so that you can notice the smell of your coffee, that you can sit before your Christmas tree and just reflect in the lights quietly and remember what Christmas was about to begin with. This Christmas season, this holiday season, my invitation for women is take time, if you can, every day, even just for a couple minutes, to sit with this Savior who wanted to enter into your pain and to save you from it. He is doing it now, and he will continue to do it for you as you heal.
Karen and David, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jonathan.
And now, dear listeners, abide in him so that when he appears, we may be confident and unashamed. This has been Unashamed with Executive Director Sean Maney, Clinical Director Shuri Montague, Men's Director David Noble, and Spouse Care Director Karen Kallberg. Unashamed is produced by me, Jonathan Shilts. Our theme song is No Indication, used with permission by TrackTribe. Please subscribe, comment, and share to support this podcast. First Light Ministries is a nonprofit funded by the generosity of our donors. If you'd like to receive help for sexual compulsion or betrayal, visit www.firstlightstlouis.org.